George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. That was one of their favorite desserts, a chilled Paw Paw.
A Paw Paw is a fruit?
Hi, I'm Danner. I'm a computer engineering student from Huntsville, Alabama. When I was a kid, my family built this shed in the hills of southern Tennessee. It sat dormant for nearly 20 years and began to deteriorate. I'm currently on a mission to restore the shed and convert it into an amazing tiny house. With the help of my dad, I'm learning the basics of construction, restoring the land, and documenting our story. This is Abandoned Shed to Tiny House.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you saw the last video, we tore down our front wall and we went ahead and replaced it with some fresh sheathing. We also finished up a couple framing projects. In this episode, we're actually going to be doing a few things. We're going to be meeting with a utility company, meeting with the Tennessee Department of Agriculture, and doing some land clearing. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Today we met with an engineer from Fayetteville Public Utilities about electrical hookup. Our plan is to run our house entirely on solar, but we don't want to close down the option of installing electrical service. To do that, we have to pull an electrical permit and get a rough-in and final inspection. It won't change that much in how we would wire the house, but it preserves the option.
We can come from the pole up here at the northeast corner, but if we pull overhead primary, the trees are going to have to go. We've got to have 15 foot on either side. Your service, your building itself needs to be within 200, 240 foot of that transformer. As far as you are there, we would have to do a primary. Of course, top line primaries, it is open wire, it is the hot line.
It's just a single wire, like not...
Yeah, it's just cable. I mean,
okay.
it's just
Okay.
It looks just like it's cable coming down to the ground.
And if we were to tap into this one, do we add another transformer or do you go into this transformer?
Oh, well now if we were running a service off of this,
okay,
we would just hook into the same transformer. Of course, that just depends on the load of the transformer, whether we would change it out to a bigger one or not. Of course, underground primary, we can go as far as we need to go. It's just a little more expensive. The biggest cost of that is the safety equipment and the equipment it takes to get off of that pole and get it underground. That's the biggest expense. Of course, the wire itself is pretty expensive too.
We'd like to avoid overhead wires, but burying primary high voltage cables is a lot more expensive than the lower voltage once the transformer steps down to our house power. Either way, we might need to run a pole closer to the position before we can go underground.
I mean, just anywhere right in here where it's out of your ways. Perfect. I mean, it's not a big deal.
So run the power right here, transform it, and then go underground.
That's right.
So then if we want to get power over to the shop, would we have to transform it again over there, or is there enough distance where we can...
Depending on what you're going to do in the shop, y'all plan on doing a lot of woodworking or a lot of metalworking or something where you got to have a lot of power?
I think at some point there is a possibility we'll have some big equipment in there.
Yeah. So
welding, yeah.
So you'll want to get it as close to the transformer as you can. That keeps from burning up your motors and stuff like that when you're working on stuff.
Okay, so we have been doing a little bit of cleaning since the last episode. You might remember we showed some of our temporary kitchen setup, and we started to have food just piled up all over the windows and all over the place. So we actually won this cabinet for $40 at an auction. And this is a great temporary solution to just hold all of our stuff for now. We just filled it up with all kinds of food and stuff, plates, just everything we need, our coffee maker. And so this is just a great way to just put everything in one place, and we just think it's really cool. Did a little reorganizing. We have our fridge, just everything's ready to go in here, so we could really live in here right now if we wanted to while we finish the project. But overall, really just opened the space up a lot. Looks really great in here. And yeah, we're just ready to keep on moving forward and really just get to work on all of this. Okay, so now we're gonna have Chris come out from the Tennessee Department of Agriculture, and he's really just gonna walk around with us and tell us all about the trees we have on the property, tell us what we can keep, what we should cut down, what we can use for the house, and yeah, it should be really fun, so let's go ahead and meet with Chris. We were excited to meet with Chris Carney from the Tennessee Department of Agriculture to walk our property and discuss short and long-term timber plans. Chris is an encyclopedia of knowledge on trees and land management. It's super impressive to know that much about the native tree species and also the invasive species on our land. The goal was to identify the timber we can use short-term to finish the house, interior and exterior, and we even plan to build some simple furniture like tables, shelves, and desks.
So black locust, bodock, even white oak, red mulberry. I've heard old timers would even use red mulberry. Sassafras is also kind of medium in terms of rot resistance. Don't use red oak. Your old cabins, they would use red cedar, of course poplar, chestnut if they had chestnut in the area. I've heard people talk about they would use like chestnut for the bottom sill logs, and then if they didn't have enough, they'd use poplar up above that. But chestnut was here, 100 years ago. Now, once the chestnut dropped out, you could argue a little bit that the oak hickory kind of expanded. But now you're starting to see, depending on your past land use, our species compositions in certain areas are very degraded. And that could be, as a result of past land management use. People have practiced selective harvesting, where that selectivity focuses on the best, and they end up leaving the undesirable species. So the undesirable species continue to grow, the crowns get bigger, which is only creating more shade to encourage more shade-tolerant species to grow. So it's almost like a cycle that continues. I mean, that's what a lot of times you walk around here and you see. It's mostly, you stand back and you see lots of trees, but once you get in there, you start looking at the species. Okay, is this species favorable for what you want going forward? And that's where as a landowner, you kind of determine, what do I want to use this land for? And kind of prioritize your objectives. And then that might steer you toward certain species to favor going forward.
So we have 3 main goals. First, we want to use lumber from our property for the shed exterior, interior, and some furnishings. Next, we want to use the land to grow some fruits and vegetables, and maybe even create some hiking trails. Lastly, we want to eliminate all invasive species such as Chinese privet, Atlantis, and Lonicera or Japanese honeysuckle.
Okay, so mad buck, that would be maple, ash, dogwood, buckeye, box elder, or some people refer to it as mad BBs. So those are all native opposite twig species. It's just a quick reference in the woods. If you see a tree with opposite twigs, a twig opposite side of each other. Some cases though, that twig is broken off, but you should still be able to see a scar on the opposite side. If you had to be picky, this is my personal opinion, I would prefer to have sugar maple than red maple, because sugar maple, there is a timber value to sugar maple. That's considered hard maple. So cabinetry, you use that for cabinetry, hardwood flooring. You can for red maple also, but it's not as valuable as sugar maple. Both of them are beautiful species for aesthetic reasons, but from a timber perspective, you would prefer sugar maple over red maple. Now this is ash. That big boy's ash. So the emerald ash borer, I think it was first discovered in Tennessee in 2010 over in Knoxville. So our native ash species, which includes green, white, and blue, they are going to get hammered. But it's in the county, and I could take you to farms left and right that are trees that are dying and rotten. A lot of times you'll see a D-shaped hole where the bug, the larva, comes out of it, and it forms a D-shaped hole, and then you'll see sprouts from the base. You'll start seeing dieback from the top, and supposedly, I think whenever you see symptoms like that, the tree will probably be dead in 2 to 3 years. I would get out in front of the front while there is still a value. While if you try to cut a bug infested tree, to me that you're cutting a hazardous tree. How structurally sound is the tree inside with all the larvae? I wouldn't feel comfortable in cutting that tree, me personally.
I definitely wouldn't feel comfortable cutting it without the bugs.
So yeah, if you've got good marketable ash, I'd go ahead and cut it. Get what you can out of it now.
All right, that's good to know.
Elm it's native, but you'll see a lot of it it would be on my list of undesirables. That's persimmon right up here. I don't know if it's a female or male, but I always think the bark looks like charcoal briquettes, like square. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's
I'll
persimmon.
have to look on the other one.
Some people, you can market that as North American ebony or white ebony. It's in the ebony family. You know, they used to make golf club heads out of it. It's pretty wood. I think they have issues with it drying. Cedar, I mean, you could cut that one down. The thing about cedar is, you know, limbing it up, you know, it takes a little work. So cutting those, limbing them up, you see all those limbs, you know, you can use it inside or you could use it, you know, outside if it's got a good heartwood, red heartwood. Right now, it's okay. You could cut that. I would prefer your hardwoods on this site than cedar. I'm okay with having one or two of those that size scattered. But, you know, if it was taking over a site that is able to support your better native hardwood species, then I would put it on the chop block. So yeah, you know, dogwood, just still sugar maple, dogwood, poplar, cedar. So any of these cedars, you know, it won't sprout. So if you took some snippers and just cut those, it's not going to sprout from the root system. It's got a seed back in. Whereas if you cut, you know, dogwood this size, it would send up a sprout. You know, the birds are sitting on the limbs, depositing the seed. From a deer perspective, they provide a little winter thermal cover, which is nice. The only thing you have control of is space and sunlight. And certain species will be able to grow in the shade. Certain species, you know, favor more sunlight. So the species that you see right here in the understory are mostly shade tolerant because it's shaded, right?
Right.
And the trees that are in the overstory are predominantly yellow poplar, which is very shade intolerant. So you look around, all your seed, this is all yellow poplar seed. So all that seed, you imagine how much seed is on this hillside. And that seed stays viable for, you know, 7 years or so. So you think about all that seed over this whole hillside. And that's what, you know, some people ask, you know, should I plant trees if I want to cut this hillside? Well, you can, but you think about if you allow sunlight down and you're having machinery come across this and you're going to kick up the ground, all that seed is there. All it needs is sunlight and an opportunity to get going. But for the most part, I'm okay with it I like seeing poplar on this site. It could be a whole lot worse. I could be seeing exotic invasive species the same size, or which specifically Ailanthus. And there are plenty of hillsides where you come in and this whole hillside's covered with, you know, exotic invasive species. So this is Paw Paw, and a lot of times you'll find a patch of Paw Paw. So it'll have these brown hairy buds on the end. Size-wise, if you get an 8-inch Paw Paw, that's a big Paw Paw in terms of diameter of tree. They're an understory tree, okay? And a lot of times there's one right in front of you. They sprout from the root system, right? These are all basically the same family. They're just sprouting from the roots. They're an old species. They're not pollinated by honeybees. They are pollinated by flies and beetles. The old timers, they would go fishing. And in April, whenever they would flower, they go fishing and they put their stringer of fish on a limb to attract flies. So it would help pollinate because a patch has to be cross-pollinated with a different patch. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, that was one of their favorite desserts, a chilled Paw Paw.
A Paw Paw is a fruit?
It is the largest native edible North American fruit.
I've never even heard of that.
And now
what does it look like?
Now the native food market, the breweries, the winery, they're all catching on. They're making beer out of Paw Paw. They're making jam. It's a healthy fruit. You don't eat the skin or the seeds because it will make you sick. But the fruit, you take almost like an avocado, split it in two, take a spoon and get the pulp out. That's what you eat. And it's got a short shelf life. So that's why it hasn't historically been mass, marketed. So you should be able to tell. Yeah, see, this is a flower bud. So this will be a flower this spring. That will be a flower this spring. There's another flower. There's another flower.
Well, dang, I wonder if we knocked any of them down.
I'm sure we did.
So come back in the spring. In terms of when to harvest, would probably be last week of August, first 2 to 3 weeks of September. So you would come back, and if the raccoons and possums haven't got to them first, a lot of times, ideally, if they haven't already fallen on the ground, you look up, and you can just gently sway the tree, and if they may come off, but catch them. And the leaves are very, very tropical. This is in the tropical custard apple family. This is the northernmost. Yeah, this is this is basically a tropical
look like
tree.
Jungle or something?
Yes, it's very tropical. I mean, it's native.
I always get that vibe from right in this area.
So
pretty cool. We have a little house in here, and we got the tropical trees surrounding us.
Yeah.
So you could, I think the largest orchard a few years ago was just 5 acres. There's in Washington, or not Washington, but over in Maryland, there's just 5 acres, and they were overnighting fruit, $10 a pound, selling out shelves in New York, Chicago.
That's so cool.
Yeah, look it up. George Washington, chill Paw Paw.
How do you spell it?
P-A-W, P-A-W, no
Wow.
space. There's Paw Paw beer. There's a Paw Paw festival that was started in Ohio.
That's cool.
And it's
Well, I hope we find some more.
becoming quite a thing. This is your number one to kill. That is Ailanthus. That is Tree of Heaven, Paradise Tree. That will take over the whole site. So it's kind of a dark, smooth gray. It will get big. It'll grow. I've seen them 3 foot bigger diameter. Okay. They're dioecious. There's female and male trees. They have those thick, blunt twigs at the top. Chemicals are, ideally the best way to treat those. You could cut the tree and immediately, when I say immediately, within 30 minutes, treat the stump with chemical. Or you could do a hack and squirt. You could bring a hatchet. Do this in like August, July, August, September, early September. You could take a hatchet and make a downward cut, and then spray a chemical that's recommended. Go over about 1 inch, make another downward cut, a pocket, and then you're going to spray another. And then that time of the year, everything is moving down to the root system.
Oh.
So that's when you want to hit it, because if it goes down to the root system, it's going to nail it. So you do that all the way around and just walk away, and eventually it'll kill it. There is a basal application too. There's some certain herbicides, Pathfinder 2 I think is one, that you can spray the bottom 18 inches mixed with a basal oil, and it'll penetrate the bark, and it'll kill it also. But this species is the number one threat in our area, your county, Lincoln County, southern middle Tennessee, probably Tennessee. Ailanthus is bad. A lot of times you'll see Ailanthus with these bumps, and they'll be scattered all over them.
We have walked the entire property now, and I've learned a lot about trees. So what is your takeaway from all of what you've seen?
Well, first off, you have a beautiful farm. It's something that you should be proud of. You've got plenty of native species that are big enough to supply you with wood for your house, your home, enough for inside and outside. I would, you've got yellow poplar to work with. You've got plenty of ash that we know the emerald ash borer is on its way. It's not here. We didn't see any signs that it is currently here, but it's coming. You've got large enough ash to cut, to utilize. You have black cherry, and you've got black walnut. You've even got some big box elder if you wanted to turn rolling pins or bowls out of. And we also identified some problem species. you've learned to identify two enemies, one Chinese privet and the other tree of heaven or ailanthus. And you know how prolific it can be now.
Yeah.
So it's here. It will continue to get worse. I'll try to give you some information on how to control and knock that back a little bit.
Well, thank you so much for coming out. It's been awesome.
Appreciate it. I enjoyed it.
So one of the trees we saw a lot when we were walking around with Chris is these tulip poplars. And tulip poplar is actually the Tennessee state tree, which is pretty cool. And a lot of barns around here use tulip poplar as a siding. And so if we want to end up using real wood siding on our shed, we can use tulip poplar, do some board and batten. And just in this area, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trees just surrounding me. There's probably 20 around here. And these are just huge trees, and we could probably use 2 or 3 of them, and that'd be more than enough to do siding on the shed. Yes. So thanks again to Chris for coming out, helping us with that. But now our friend Ryan is going to come out. He is a big forestry mulcher, and he's going to help us do some clearing around the land. Okay, so we made it down into the hollow now. Ryan actually cleared out a ton of stuff. He made us a road down into the hollow, and this is actually the first time that we've been able to get tractors down in here in a really long time. And so we got a little bit excited and just decided to start clearing out this area down here. So Dad had the bush hog, I had the tractor with the bucket, and we were just knocking some stuff out, and it was really fun. One of the things we noticed a while ago that we've been wanting to come check out is this big walnut tree. And we think we're gonna do this as an experiment with the chainsaw mill and try to get some slabs out of that. We also cleared out a ton of stuff, and now we just have all this trees here, giant burn pile, and yeah, we'll burn that. But yeah, this is actually a really beautiful area down here. We have these huge walnuts all around, and Dad's actually talked about possibly building some kind of pavilion down here one day just so we can have a little picnic spot. And yeah, it looks so nice down here now. Ryan did a great job, and we're so happy with that. Also happy with the stuff he did around our field. I'm excited to continue clearing out some of this brush on this hill just so we can have this amazing view from up at the shed. Let me just pull up a picture real quick of what it used to look like. Just beautiful grass. One of our goals is just to get it looking like that again. That's just kind of what happens over time if you don't maintain it. So we're gonna get it there eventually. Just keep maintaining this land, and it's going to be really awesome. Am I going to break it this time? What, you want me to swing on it?
Proud.
But I think that's going to be a wrap for this video. Big shout out to Chris from the Tennessee Department of Agriculture. Thanks to Ryan for clearing out all this land, and also to Fayetteville Public Utilities. Also, thank you to the Patreons, everyone who's liked and subscribed, watched these videos. Really appreciate you guys watching and all your support. And I will see you guys in the next video.